Hello.
Hey.
And good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Welcome you to the next episode of AWS GameTime. I'm your host, Taras. I'm a business development rep within AWS for Games, and I'm here with my co-host, Darren. Would you like to introduce yourself quickly?
Hi, everyone. So I'm a solutions architect at AWS. Really excited to be here and, really excited to showcase our guests. So we have Flowfire Games. I'm sure you've heard of them before, and you must have heard of their project previously, SYNTHETIK 1. But thank you, Alex and Eric, for joining us today. Perhaps you can just give us a quick introduction as to, what Flowfire Games is about, and also just tell us what game you're going to talk to us about today.
Hey, nice to be here. I'm Eric. I'm the creative director, and I co-founded the company with Alex. Alex?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Alex. Thank you for having us. I'm dealing with technical issues, so that would be programming and also the legal side of the business and everything else. So, Eric, if you want to keep going.
Yeah. We start with the slides, or we're just going.
I think Taras has an icebreaker. Sorry about that kind of technical glitch just now, but Taras, I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, just before we jump into the meaty topic of today, just quickly, since it's Throwback Thursday, guys, I'd like to start, what game, would you really, define, say that you, really defined your childhood? For me, it'd be Simpsons Hit and Run. For me, it's a PS2 game that my parents couldn't let me sort of play because of GTA, right? And I wanted to look at something else. Whoa, my Alexa's jumped out. Anyway, Alex, let's start with you.
It's a lot of games. I would have to think about it. Probably earlier childhood would be Age of Empires 1. So it's like late 90s, I guess, when that came out. It was really one of the big games. I always have to remember if I think about the games I played as a kid.
Awesome.
For me,
Eric?
For me, I would say Warcraft 3
Nice.
is the game I played the most. And Command & Conquer. Back then, it was all about strategy games, and I really played all of these a lot. Tiberium Sun, especially Warcraft 3, and later I went more in the shooter direction with Modern Warfare 2 was my first real shooter game, I think. And then, I still like both.
Nice.
These really the defining ones, I would say.
Nice one.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm
How about
an
you, Darren?
RTS diehard as well. Yeah, so I think for me it was like Red Alert 2, and then Yuri's Revenge. Great expansion on already a very rich universe. And then after that, kind of StarCraft 2 came out, right? That was when StarCraft became this really super competitive. Obviously, you had the Brood War before that, and then they updated everything. Nice shiny characters, nice new gameplay. So RTS fan all the way from the beginning. But we're here today to talk about your game from Flowfires. So perhaps you could just give us a sneak peek as to what you want to talk about.
We're talking about SYNTHETIK 1, a bit about SYNTHETIK 1, the history, how we got there, of course, and then our new game is SYNTHETIK 2. It's a new game, new engine, new networking, new everything. A lot of big stuff, a lot of work. Still in early access. It's now coming up. Now update 12 is coming out soon with the full multiplayer launch using Amazon services, of course, and full dedicated server online co-op. So really great stuff coming up. And a lot more new class, new gameplay, everything improved, enhanced.
That's awesome. And we've had the benefit, Taras and I, of actually playing some of the early access. It's available on Steam at the moment, and it's a lot of fun. The game is hard, typical for roguelites. There's definitely a skill element involved, but as we've been playing it these past couple of weeks, we're definitely getting better and better. So without any further ado, let us show the gameplay trailer for SYNTHETIK 2.
Earth, 1985. Fusion technology and self-learning computers shape the cities of the future. But it was not to last. destructive machine gods have risen, and their machine legion was unleashed on humanity. We have no more time. Our only hope, a forgotten prototype. Android, wake up. Challenge your gods, Android.
Okay, love the music. Got my heart pumping, that's for sure. I think we've got some information that we can share with our audience for sure through slides. Let's get that going right now.
All right. So let's go to the trailer we already shown. The gameplay footage is a bit old. The new one looks so much better. We went a really long way in the early access. So we will later see some more updated footage, especially with update 12 now coming out. Yeah, way better than the start. So a lot of big updates. So how did we start? Me and Alex met at the Games Academy in Berlin. We were there for 2 years, both, I think. Yeah, and games education. So and we started there with an FPS project. We did as students. We already were doing some networking stuff there already. Quite big scope for a student project, but yeah, we got something well going. But it was, of course, a student project. Then later we sold some Unity asset store plugins, most notably like camera rendering, anti-aliasing plugin, like super sampling, which got us a little bit of budget for the first game. And we also started the SYNTHETIK 1 prototype. In GameMaker, it was very simple. It was 2D with no pre-rendered graphics, so everything was like Photoshop graphics at the start. Later, the graphics shifted a lot, and a lot of things shifted a lot. And we thought it would be 6 months to complete it, apparently. But then 3 years later, SYNTHETIK 1 was launched on Steam. We had a small, very underground early access on itch.io, which only a few people played, but it helped really test and give us some iteration time. And surprisingly, when we were in the itch.io phase, people really we got some really good resonance. Like friends played it unironically even. So they like to play it actually. So that was very strange to see, but it was reassuring. And then we launched on Steam. We decided to do peer-to-peer multiplayer before we launched, and we launched then on Steam with simple 2-player peer-to-peer multiplayer. And that worked out. We had a little bit of community, and after that we just we're growing very slow but steadily to word of mouth, basically word of mouth to very grassroots community. One guy telling the other guy, this game is kind of cool and stuff. We didn't have big marketing or localization or media support, just very from one person to another.
Yeah, and that's awesome, right? Like you found, you had an initial idea that you started off as students. Super impressed that this was the the seed, right? The seed of an idea that has now grown into such a successful game. And we do have a bit of information. It's on your Steam page, obviously, and on your company page, but Synthetic 1 has been incredibly successful. And, really excited to see what Synthetic 2 is going to do on Steam and for players as well. But I guess, what's the tip here? Because for me, just hearing about how you started, the fact that you and Alex happened to meet, who you work with and the team that you build is super important for any kind of project. So in this particular case, what was it about Alex and Eric, that dynamic that you two shared that, made you realize that you could really achieve something that could be this level of commercial success?
We didn't realize it could be commercial success. It was like at the very end, people liked it. But before, it was like a pure gamble. No idea. Could be completely $0, or it could be someone. You barely ever know how it's going to turn out, especially for the first commercial game. Even like the big publishers, they struggle to gauge the success of their products. But yeah, we really were gambling very high there. So it was a real high gamble. But yeah, me doing the game design and the art and Alex doing the programming, it is very complementing, I guess. So we feel that you need.
I think it's very important for us, and I think every in quote startup game dev studio that like your founding team really has all the skills needed to execute in all the direction of the game you actually need. So like Eric said, design, art, programming, and all the various different subcategories of the disciplines, being able to set up company structure and everything that you're not necessarily required like to immediately start hiring a lot of people. If you have big funding, that's great, but typically you probably don't. So I think that's really important. And the other thing is really staying at it and continuously improving. So as you see on the slide, the Synthetic 1 Steam launch was in 2018, but really stayed on the game for at least 2 years, probably 3. I think the ultimate update came out end of 21, I believe. So like for a long time. And again, it's before this was 3 years, and then 3 years after Steam launch, and really continuously hitting the game with new updates and improving based on the feedback of the community.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about that kind of ongoing journey that you've had with Synthetic 1, and we'd love for you to share a bit of that insight into what you've taken from Synthetic 1 into Synthetic 2. Just as a comment from our audience, the Donut 85, bring me a new Command and Conquer game, please. I'm right with you there for sure. It would be great if we get some more games out of that IP. One of my favorites for sure. All right, let's continue.
I got to click. Right now, our core development team right now in Synthetic 2 is me, Alex. We have Santiago doing networking, programming, which is going to be relevant later in the slides, of course. We have Moritz doing 3D art and weapons and units for the game. And Pavel doing also a lot of 3D art, environment art, level design, also so the environments basically for the game. And me helping around, and also do sounds a bit. Moritz also doing some sounds. If you're a small team, you got to do a lot of things, right? You got to do marketing, you got to do websites, you got to do patch notes. There's many small things, so it's complicated. But there you get an overview.
And does everyone on the core team get involved with the community? So on the Discord or on the Steam kind of discussions? Just curious.
More or less. People can as they like.
We don't force anybody, but they have their roles in the Discord and so on, and engage with the community when they want to.
But then encouraged, I guess.
Awesome. Okay. Cool. Let's kind of see what Synthetic is about for our members of our audience who may not have seen it before.
So Synthetic 1, later renamed to Legion Rising, which was kind of an expansion. It was a free expansion, which added a lot of things. So you might see this name. It's a tactical shooter rogue-lite with focus on deep gunplay and movement. I wanted to add I really like top-down shooters, like in my childhood or whatever, on consoles or whatever. But I really hated how they stayed so far behind the FPS in terms of mechanics. I always had to play shooters which will just hold down the trigger and you keep auto-firing, infinite ammunition, no like aiming required, no skill required for many of these games, which I really hated. So I wanted to bring some of these advancements, you saw in FPS, but not on a top-down genre. I want to bring these advancements, and also added my ideas I had for the FPS or for the shooter genre, right? So I wanted to implement, what I thought would be nice, maybe. So we have this focus on the deep gunplay movement. You have this Counter-Strike style stop and go, where if you are accurate, if you stand still, and inaccurate if you move. So there's a duality of standing and shooting and taking hits, but evading, right? But there's also new mechanics such as switching ammo. We have heat on each weapon has a heat bar. We have a 3-stage reload system where you eject the weapon first and then reload, and you can also active reload and even super active reload, basically. So, which is hard to pull off at the start, but it's much more rewarding if you pull it off. So if you learned it, it's very fast and feel more like an action hero. It's not like it's automatic. I press a button and it's all done for me, but you're more engaged with it, right? And requires more skill and gets you in more tight situation. Also, you have weapon jamming, which is sounding like a negative, but if you're fast in unjamming, it's actually positive. So that turned out quite nicely. And many, many more things, but and it's a rogue-lite, so you keep retrying. There's different enemies, different floors, different bosses and everything, and you keep trying to reach the heart of Armageddon and prevent the machines taking over mankind. You play an android, which is basically the only chance you have to defeat the machines, because the android, even on meta level, it combines the skill of the human with the mechanics of the machine, right? And you are the human, right? And you, the player, are the human, and the game is the machine, right? The character. But also in the game, the android is the machine, and the human controlling the android. So on both on the meta layer and on the in-game layer, it's the human and the machine working together to be better than the little machine, which are the enemy AI.
Yeah, it's a nice touch, right? I think given the concerns around AI today, and also the uses and the use cases around AI, that's a nice kind of layer of depth that SYNTHETIK and the rest of the team were early to this conversation. I guess since 2014, you've been thinking about these concepts, so it's nice to see that play through. Let's talk about kind of the next stage on the game itself, and perhaps the journey itself, right? There's been a lot of work into this. Perhaps you could kind of take us through some of that. And sorry, Taras, I think you're going to ask something as well.
Taras?
No. Let's get straight into it.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay. For SYNTHETIK 1, but as I said, it's good training for our future. So SYNTHETIK 1, it's pre-rendered 2D. I rendered the 3D models in Cinema 4D, and then there's just images, right? Images imported into a 2D engine. So everything you see is technically it's top-down, flat 2D, and there's no 3D in the entire game, outside of maybe the bullet trajectory or something. But it uses a GameMaker engine, which is a pure 2D, and it has a 2-player peer-to-peer based online co-op. But we have these proxy servers which help with the connection. So it's a heavily upgraded peer-to-peer. It's not like the simple, just direct connect. We had 3 years of development and 3 years of post-launch content for free. And we got many, many great reviews on Steam, 69% rating maybe right now. Fluctuates always with 1% or something. And
Yeah,
we
I
got
took-
some nice awards also.
Yeah, I took that rating from your Steam page yesterday. So like, I think that's as up to date as I could get it. And, you know, it's really amazing to see kind of the different awards that you've been recognized with, particularly for your, I guess, your first commercial game. Is that right to say?
Yeah, it was very nice. Yes. I mean, it's the gradual refinement that, that got us there, I guess. But yeah, you gotta be honest and say at the times we were working on it, it often did look like the effort was worth it to put so much effort into free updates and into so many changes and so many improvements. But yeah, we wanted to do something for community, and it was definitely great in the end. But it necessarily didn't look like it would be so the smartest business decision to put so much effort into this game. But yeah, we are very
super
proud.
interesting. Yeah, because like you said, you've had 3 years of updates, and you know, just literally if you scroll through Steam, you can see the next set of updates, the patch notes, and the community just is so passionate about this, right? So keen to see the balancing, the latest adjustments to gameplay. How did you collect that information to make sure that you're evolving the game in the right way? Because 3 years is a long time, right? Like that is, as you mentioned, time that you could have put into other projects or you know, done other things. So just curious to get your 2 cents on that.
Most of the stuff is coming from our Discord, where people are most engaged. But there's, I mean, we have all the channels. Steam forums is usually more about complaints. The Discord is the most productive by far, and we also have some Reddit a little bit. But Reddit people mostly just post something. So most of the feedback, like 80%, is like Discord, and then 15, I guess, Steam forums. And from based on that, and then I need to, of course, double check or what we think and stuff. But that's the where the feedback is coming from.
No, that's awesome. So that's kind of a pointer for our audience. If you want to get in touch with Eric and Alex and the rest of the team, make sure you reach out to them on Discord or Steam, and they'll see your message, and you know, who knows, they might get in touch. Awesome. But let's kind of move on now to Synthetic 2. That's what we're here to talk about. There's a lot of excitement around this game. It's already in early access. Give us the elevator pitch. Tell us what's going on now.
Synthetic 2, it's the new the big sequel. We had a bit of a rough start, but it's really a big evolution in many aspects. You have a new 3D engine and Unity, which is much more capable and much less limited than the old. We have many new mechanics, lots of new content, new completely radical, different 3D graphics, new classes. There's new mechanics such as the shotgun, single shell reloading, dual wield, and many other things people wanted to see in Synthetic 1, but which we were not really capable pulling off in that. New code base, huge new modding features. You can actually mod in the game in real time without installing anything, and download something instantly and play it right away. So you can make your own classes and abilities, weapons, everything, game modes or modifiers. Many great things. And it's still early access. We had 12 big patches so far. The update 12 is now coming out with many big improvements, and with the full multiplayer launch also with 4-player dedicated servers online co-op. Here's a screenshot how it looks right now. Much more evolved than the trailer version. Even that is a bit older, but
it's really polished, right? I think we can see the texture details. You've got like that dynamic lighting now. You know, the Synthetic 1 had a characteristic kind of style, right? So definitely very recognizable. How are you going to keep that within Synthetic 2? Because yes, you have this kind of top-down view. How are you going to keep players, you know, kind of focused on seeing, okay, this is Synthetic 2, and I see this, and I know exactly what it is?
Yeah, we have always had a bit of a special style. I mean, now it's of course more people involved, so everyone brings in his own touch, of course. But you can see, especially on this screenshot, there's a lot of very like futuristic and futuristic shape language, and it's very colorful. The ground is, it's orange. Which game has orange ground? It's still very colorful and has a special like cheesy sci-fi retro kind of touch. You see the rounded shapes, you see the special vehicles, you see even like the locker, what is it? The shelves have special shapes and design language. So we really try to keep the special synthetic style. It is a bit different due to being real time and not more people being involved, but I think it is a good continuation and evolution of the old or the original.
Awesome.
Yeah, but
very cool. And I guess just for our audience, there's a QR code. Give it a scan, and then you'll be able to get onto the early access page for Synthetik 2. We know that it's in early access. That's awesome. We've got lots of updates have been happening. Multiplayer. Now, I know we're going to dive into this later on in the kind of architectural part of the episode. This feature has been very frequently asked and asked about in the Steam forums. People are very, very keen to see this. Yeah, maybe you can just kind of explain a little bit more about what players can look forward to.
Maybe that's better for Alex.
I mean,
about the multiplayer.
Just on the design side, you can stay. I take over next time.
You mean about the multiplayer features? We have of course now, compared to Synthetik 1, in Synthetik 1 the most requested feature was more player support. So while 2 players plays really great and more tactical and more original to the core gameplay, more players can of course be also very fun. And if you have like 3 or other people, you want to play with them, right? So now we have support from 1 to 4 players. We highly recommend like 3 or 2 players though. 4 can also be quite nice, but it's quite chaos. It's a chaos, but it can also be very fun chaos. But it's all supported now. Technically, we also support like way more, but the gameplay doesn't support it so well. But so we have new mechanics. We have reviving. We have we have started to add some new interactions which are coming up. Improved chat, global chat. We have a matchmaking system now where you can press matchmaking and it just throws you into someone else's lobby. And this is now with update 12. Now with update 12, the first full released version of the multiplayer is coming out, and we do more refinements, of course, after this. So now in the next weeks, it's going to be there. We will gauge the community feedback and then do improvements based on what
in general on the multiplayer. I think maybe not everybody has in general that you can play together with your friends, and that the co-op mode is not really that different than the single player mode. I mean, you play together, so you have to make decisions who gets what weapon and what classes do you play and so on, which of course is then playing with the friends then always more fun than playing solo.
Yeah, of course. So it's even more synergies, right? So I think you've mentioned the gameplay gets even more kind of realistic, and there's more skill based, and we can definitely touch upon that next. But then you've also got the fact that you are going to have the right kind of set of skills to match the players that you're playing with as well. So I think that's really fun. Always.
Yeah, you can coordinate. You can. It's opening a lot of new things, of course, and technically it's way more advanced than the Synthetik 1 with dedicated server, base co-op over the peer-to-peer. This we went about on the start. This slide. Should we reiterate on it?
Yeah, I think we just want to highlight for our audience that, as always, we're going to do a live gameplay segment. And Taras is actually going to play SYNTHETIK 2 on his PC, and it's going to stream that for you. I think you're going to be able to see, at least within the gameplay that we showed today, some of that weapon jamming and also weapon heat management. And it's pretty tough. It's a lot going on. So cut Taras some slack, but give him your support in the comments for sure.
Yeah, and also Darren, you might have to bleep if I start swearing as well.
Family friendly show.
yeah, definitely.
But awesome. Let's kind of go on, and maybe we can actually just learn a little bit more about the game engine. So obviously, that's a big task, right? Just to let our audience know, if you're switching game engines, number one, from 2D to a 3D asset game, is there anything that you can copy across or move across, or are you starting from scratch again?
Yeah, I mean, especially in our case, I think it's probably even more challenging. So not just the switch of engines, but actually really restarting our whole process. So as we discussed before, we worked on the first game for about 6 years. I mean, during the last 2 years or so, we were then starting to think about what to do next, what do we want to improve, all these different things. So was quite a big move, and especially in our case, since Eric actually scripted in the first game as well, that we decided that we don't want to continue to like this, because he needs to worry about all the design and art and all the rest of things that me and programmers take care of the coding work. So there's big jumps, so we had to really restart everything from scratch as relates to our development processes. Of course, on the other hand, since it's the second game of the first game, we still need to make sure that it looks, at least to a certain degree, like a second game of the first one, and it plays more or less the same way with some upgrades here and there. So there was long discussions. This was about 2019. Which engine do we go with? Because we were really pushing the limits of GameMaker back then. So it was basically about, do we go with Unreal Engine or with Unity? Back then they started with their high definition render pipeline, this is called. So it's a big change in technology on their side, and it was very early days of that. And now we went with Unity. In this case, for example, we didn't want, with a new team, start to work in Unreal where we had to write C++ versus C#. C# is a bit easier to get into, and in general, most of the developers that came on board for SYNTHETIK 2 were familiar with Unity, so that's the big reasons we went with Unity. And it worked out. So
yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of lessons that can be shared, I think, with our audience. So I guess, what is the key lesson that you've learned from making this shift, coming up the curve with a new engine, but also different programming languages and changing your workflow? What's the key lesson you'd like to share with other creators and game makers?
I mean, there's a lot from my end. I definitely would say that you need to give yourself time and to iterate on your processes as well, and don't just run with the first thing. We never really did this, but here also took a year plus before we really pulled the trigger on starting the new project, of just thinking about. We hinted about with the modding that we have now in the game as well. So we call this our framework, where in the first game, we kind of made stuff up, I would say, as we went, regards to maybe not the absolute core mechanics, but all the details. And we really spent time to try to formalize all the core design ideas about the first game, and try to have a little bit of an abstract foundation that we could implement a little bit independently of the SYNTHETIK 2 game. And I would say we spent about 1.5 years really only essentially whiteboarding this stuff, and then went into really starting this SYNTHETIK 2 project. Eric, if you want to take over.
I mean, there's many learnings, but I would say keep it simple, pick the right engine for your project. If you make an FPS, probably go Unreal. If you make something more custom, probably go Unity, I would say. Keep things simple, make systems, and then polish these up and make sure they're really fine before doing more. Don't take too many third-party plugins, and see if what the engine offers is maybe not is maybe just good enough for what you need. And I think these are like the most important.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Right, I think
Nice one.
always good to learn, and our audience always gets these little snippets. So we'll definitely make sure to share this with the broad audience as well in clips. So perhaps we can move on to talk a bit more about the technical architectural things about SYNTHETIK, and between SYNTHETIK 1 and 2, maybe some of the reasons as well that you've made this change. Just to explain for our audience, why did you change the backend, or what was the motivation?
Yeah, I mean, with the first game, we didn't really have a choice. I mean, the whole reason why we even had multiplayer was that, like, halfway in the production, the core features of the shooter were more or less working. I mean, tons of bugs and everything, but it was clear that we wanted to take more time on iterating on design and art, and so we decided I can also work on multiplayer. And with the first game, we didn't have a choice. There's no dedicated server setup or anything for that engine, so you would have to write your whole, basically the same thing twice and so on. So we went with peer-to-peer. And when we added, or when a lot more people came into the game late in the early access and in Steam and so on, we figured out that a lot of people actually had issues connecting with each other and so on. So this really grew over time, where I added some servers that would essentially just send messages back and forth that people could definitely reach each other, and so you don't have firewall issues and all these things. And for the back-end services, so that could be lobby server and chat services and so on, I used C# because I was familiar with Unity back then already, and so C# was something I would be able to work with the Mono runtime. Back then, Mono is not necessarily the official standard way of working with C#, but that's what Unity is using also. So, and that stack can run on Linux, because back then there was no way for the normal C# to run on Linux servers, and you want to use this typically. Don't need to go too much into these details, but also we had to write our own networking protocol based on UDP, because TCP doesn't necessarily work with peer-to-peer. So for firewall reasons, typically, because most firewalls are set up that you as an end user talk to some server in the cloud and so on, but like somebody else connecting to you, obviously a firewall typically wants to prevent this. With UDP, there are some, in quotes, hacks you can use to go around it. So yeah, we had to really go from scratch there.
Yeah, and this, I mean, particularly around the custom networking protocol, that's a lot of work for the team, right? Which is really behind the scenes. Yes, it delivers like a quality of gameplay experience, because you have that stable connection, and they're able to kind of match and maintain the match correctly. But in this case, wasn't there another way to do this, or was there kind of something out of the box that you could use alternatively?
Not really. I mean, it was me writing this, and that was either that or we don't do it essentially. And so, I mean, I had a little bit experience, because for the shooter that Eric mentioned earlier that we did as a student project, we actually did write also a very simple communication protocol, because back then Unity also didn't really, I mean, they had some stuff with plugins and so on, but so I was a little bit familiar with what to do in general. So it was somewhat of a logical decision for me to go the make everything yourself route.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the entire game community for SYNTHETIK 1 needs to thank you, right, to make sure that the matching works, and this, like, it's amazing work just to hear it from you now. But I guess maybe you can just talk us through with a set of diagrams how it worked back then, but then how it will work now in SYNTHETIK 2. You're not going to do the same, right?
No, it's very different. One of the reasons with all the technology shifts and so on was to really spend some time on reworking the whole multiplayer process. But I mean, we roughly hinted on this already. There's SYNTHETIK 1 service that deals with basically all the server functionality that you can connect to, and then there's different for the different regions where players play, so North America, Europe, etc. There is at least one server that is available to connect you. So when you start playing with somebody, you send messages to this server, and he just relays the messages to the other player. So that basically always works. And then the game tries via LAN or directly through the internet, direct IP connect to connect you directly with the other player. And if that works out, that's great. Then you directly play with a direct connection. Otherwise, you keep staying on the main one. I mean, it works really well compared to how it was in the beginnings, but still there are some issues, and the technology wasn't always meant to be on this scale. I mean, again, it's more like, okay, we need to add more functionality to help players play. So, for example, in the early days of Synthetik 1, when we launched it, we figured out that the game actually had issues hosting sessions when you had an IP6 IP only. We don't really know why. It's the engine, something with a socket that they set up that wasn't really working well. So we figured, like, okay, there's, I don't know, a tenth or something, don't have perfect stats on this, of players who can't really play at all, and so on. So we had to add all this functionality on top, because there was no time to really rethink everything from scratch.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. And then I guess what does the new world look like then? And maybe you could explain that to us. Is it simpler? Is it easier for the team?
For the team, it's probably a lot more complicated, I would say, but we have a lot more control over what we actually get as an experience out of it at the end. So now it's a new world. We still use C#, but now the official ASP.NET Core stack runs all natively on Linux and so on. So stability is arguably much better. We use Amazon GameLift here to host the actual sessions. So instead of peer-to-peer, we now have a server that runs everything. The server controls the enemies you fight and so on, which allows for more players to play easily. We use a gRPC HTTP. So gRPC uses HTTP essentially to communicate between the different services inside the backend. So now it's not just one big monolithic service that does everything. So yeah, it's a modern architecture. The old one was very like almost 90s essentially, and this is the new world with Kubernetes dealing with the services and so on.
And this architecture that you've shown us here, this will scale to kind of what order of magnitude of players?
I mean, we don't know. Essentially, the first limit is how many servers we get from you. And after that, I don't know. I mean, the first game had about in some points 4,000 CCUs playing, and that was really struggling with it. I don't expect any issues here. I mean, we're still in the early days of fixing issues and so on, but I don't really see a native limit here. I mean, never say anything, but I don't see us having big issues with concurrent user bases and so on.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, so it's again, you've kind of taken advantage of the modern architecture and have that growth potential, and fingers crossed for Synthetik too, of course. But yeah, no, that's good to see that you're not having to do a heavy refactor or a heavy workaround if you reach a certain user base or player base.
Yeah. One thing to highlight here also is that exactly the slide, I mean, you can keep going, it's exactly where I wanted to go with this. If you think about the differences between peer-to-peer and dedicated, it's not necessarily the case is that one is better than the other, but especially peer-to-peer can be easier to set up. Of course, you don't have to maintain servers and so on. You don't have the problem. I mean, depends a little bit. In our case, we still have a lobby server and so on, but depending on how you do it, it keeps running even if you as a company shut down or something like this. But on the other hand, it's often very hard to control the quality that players experience. So if somebody hosts the game and he's really struggling hardware-wise, or internet connection is bad and so on, that's problems that get dropped on your shoes, but you can't really affect it. Also, in general, the internet architecture, like how the network is really set up, is meant for client-server connections and not necessarily peer-to-peer connections. So especially in different regions of the world, you could really experience trouble with people not being able to connect and so on. On the other hand, dedicated takes a lot more work to set up, typically. Need to really test and ensure the quality here of the server running, because that's not necessarily the same processes as the game clients running. You need to be mindful of the costs of running this whole thing. And you need to maintain all these things also. There's updates you need to apply and so on, security and stability and so on, confirm that all these things are working. So you really have to think about a whole different architecture and machines running than with your normal single player / peer-to-peer game. But on the other hand, you can ensure the quality. So that's why you typically see big productions going with dedicated servers.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. That's really interesting insight for sure. And I guess, how is the process around development with this multiplayer feature that you obviously need to test? Perhaps you can talk us through how that changed your workflow, given that you're now using GameLift as well.
Yeah, I mean, in quotes, before we go there, in general, really the iteration speed we figured out very early on is super important. So very, very early on, we just did the naive thing. We just developed the game, and once a week we would make a build, and that would really take a long time. So very quickly, somebody was busy a whole day trying to understand why the game is not compiling anymore, because everybody's just testing in the editor and so on. So really spent a lot of time then always essentially on the side to improve our processes here. So now we have build servers with automatic fully scripted deployments using TeamCity and so on, so that every time somebody pushes a change, essentially everything spins up, deployed to servers and so on. And really the iteration speed here was key. So we tried to optimize everything about this process, what hardware we use and so on. And we have fully Kubernetes cluster and game server running in the office that we can immediately test this. So yeah, I mean, in our case, we made it be able to go down to about 6 to 10 minutes for a build to be fully compiled and deployed and everything. And this is roughly how this looks like. So we use GitLab as our version control system, self-hosted. TeamCity is self-hosted. Yep. And then we have a bunch of build servers that spin up. And when the build is done, it gets put into storage. So immediately we can test this as fast as possible when we do play sessions and so on. And again, this gets locally deployed to a Kubernetes cluster, the backend, and the game server then runs the game client. So when we do play session and now test multiplayer, it takes then 10 minutes or so for us to see something, or especially important, we have an important bug to fix, then it takes 10 minutes and we can keep going.
And that's important, right? I think that's super interesting to hear how quickly you can iterate on a local build. And I know this is for development, but then if we go to release and actually getting this out to the rest of your early access players, it seems like you're using a very, very similar kind of deployment flow. And that way your developers, your developer team has the same experience, at least from their side, but actually the build then goes to where you need it to go, so into the cloud.
Yeah, so basically it looks the same. A few things are slightly different. The machines are not in our offices anymore, but in the cloud, this whole process then takes about 1.5 hours typically. So you see a difference suddenly. And I mean, again, it was a challenge to go down that low because the game client is about 9-10 gigabytes now. So full recompiles take about 2-3 hours on our machines, and even longer on other machines, but even 1.5 hours, I think, is very manageable. And the important piece is that everything is scripted out, so we don't need to worry about anything anymore. Somebody's on holiday, now your important programmer or whatever is not available. The first game, I had to SSH into all the different machines if I want to do an update and so on. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, super interesting. And I guess we can see Amazon GameLift. That's one of AWS's services. Maybe you could run us through, I guess, some of the benefits then as well of really using this kind of scalable service for this multiplayer feature that you're trying to.
Right. GameLift in general is essentially game server hosting service, if you will, plus all kinds of different bonus features stacked on top. So includes matchmaking and all other kinds of features that you want to use. In our case, because we have our own backend that we use, we mostly focus on the backend game server hosting. So we use one tiny piece, so to speak, out of this whole toolbox. But yeah, it works out really nicely, I would say.
Awesome.
I think the next one.
Yeah. So I guess game time, right? So Taras, are we going to go ahead with the live gameplay?
Sure.
Just I think one quick thing, Darren. Do we have the backup? I think that would
I have the
actually
backup.
be a bit better on your side. Yeah, awesome.
Okay.
And it'd be great. I mean, for me already sort of play testing it, it's really intense. The gunplay is really incredible. The artwork, I guess, sort of comparing what you guys had in Legion compared to now is like you can definitely see the iteration there. So it's really, really epic work, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay. Let's get this game time going. Yeah, there we go. We just got you on setting screen, Taras, at the moment.
I don't know. As in, what I was saying is perhaps if we play the trailer instead.
Oh, okay. The video. Okay, no worries. Let's skip that again.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, you know what?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just getting latency on my side. I don't know. As in.
Yeah, we've got
now?
the video running now. All good. So what are we seeing here then? So we had, yeah, maybe you could just run us through Eric or Alex.
Yeah, we have the new commando class from update 12, and presenting the new abilities. He has like this double dash, but you also have the classic dash. And with the experimental blade kit, you can see he has micro swipes on the dash.
Right.
And let's see this. Does it over. Plasma grenade right there, and the commando also has his plasma blade from Synthetic 1. So you could see that in action.
Yeah, and actually, just for our audience, you can see the aiming circle. As Eric said, when he stops moving, it actually tightens up, right? So you get more accuracy.
Yes. You have the classic synthetic stop and go movement, where you get less effort if you move, and effort while you stand still. And this is very important for your survival and to be accurate.
I can see the reload as well. The reload, whoever's playing is very smooth.
Yeah, you have the 3-stage reload. You eject your weapon when it's empty. You reload, and you can also active reload for benefits and faster reloading. And you see it now any moment. Yes, now ejecting, reloading, active reload, goes instant. And you see him using the dashes and the blade in conjunction. At the start, really it might be a bit hard to juggle all the mechanics. But if you master them, you can do very smoothly dance around the enemies. And see, here's an other ability where it throws the blade. That is a part of the new commando. And you see,
generally the
very smoothly.
Commandos based on the radar from the first game, so it's very fast, agile class.
Yes. Very fast, agile skirmisher, very mobile, very flexible in weapon usage. If you master it, it can be very effective. You can use your blade against groups. It deals more damage if you time the blade exactly while dashing. And has many cool, skillful mechanics. Here I found this first gun. It's a nail gun with a heavy variant. All the weapons have different variants, so they're different every time you play them.
Yep.
And the nail gun is a lower rarity gun, but it's intended that all the guns are viable and you can play to the end of the game, even with your pistol.
Wow.
You see the nail gun.
This one epic revolver I had, I think, was the Judgment.
Yeah. Judgment is quite nice. It's a very powerful revolver made for accuracy.
Single shot, yeah.
Yeah. You just found a stat upgrade. There are many upgrades in the game you can find. Upgrade either your weapon or your android or other things in different directions. Still use a plasma grenade and easily dispatch with a larger group.
Oh wow, and they're just using the dash to dodge, yeah?
Yeah,
that was amazing.
Yeah. Yes, with the radar, with the commando, you can do very stylish movement if you learned it. You also have a newer healing ability, which wasn't there in Synthetic 1. Kinda there, but it's now different. You now have a dedicated slot for healing, and they get refreshed on level. And you have different slots. Some are for your team, some are not so much for your team. And yes.
Yeah, I mean that gameplay was pretty awesome, I have to admit. I love the art style. Like you said, it's very vivid. Actually, I think that is that's really interesting to kind of pull out of that. And obviously stylistically as well, we have that kind of futuristic, but kind of retro, like you said. Definitely seeing vibes of that. Taras, anything you kind of want to share from your gameplay experience?
Definitely, as in once you're immersed in it, the lighting and the textures just really adds to it. I mean, the music, the gunshots, honestly, like I've got like noise cancelling headphones on, and I was completely blown away. So once you get multiplayer, like that, guys, is like next level. So really keen to try it out when the floodgates open.
Yeah, very soon.
Yeah. And I mean, in general, it's an iteration and a progression from the first game. So now, like you said, we have all the 3D stuff, but also for the gameplay, now grenades and so on. You can throw them over objects, and they have collisions and so on. The first game, these kinds of things were typically very primitive, let's say. And so now there's a lot more opportunity for us to add new small things here and there where we think they make sense. So, yeah, really excited for the future.
Yeah, and perhaps we've got a couple of minutes left. So do you just want to touch upon the UniversEdit, the modding framework that you have? I think this is quite exciting, right? Gives more replayability, even more.
Yeah, we build our custom editor framework on top of the Unity engine. And you can, it's actually the same tools, I mean, we mostly use, but we use for designing enemies, weapons, abilities, classes, shops, quests, and currencies, ammo types, and all sorts of stuff. Bosses, even for bosses, maybe not completely, but mostly. Yeah, so many things can be done and created with the editor. And it's less of a modding kit, it's more of a creation kit. It's more like a game content creation kit. And the special thing is that it's really built on top of the game. So you have access to it while playing. You can go to the tutorial and then to the special modding menu. You see it on the next slide. No, not this one.
This one, yeah.
Yes, there's like, you see on the left, you see all the types, and in the middle, all the content. So you can just copy one of our perks or abilities or whatever, and then make your own version or make new ones from scratch. And you can just do that while being in the game. You don't need to download anything. You don't need to install anything weird. Don't go to any weird folders or anything. Just press copy, and then you press save, and it spawns in the game. You can just go to any weapon, change some stats, save it. It's in the game, just there, spawning in the normal campaign.
That's very cool.
That's really amazing. And you can also edit make changes while being in a tutorial. So you can basically play and then change some stats and then respawn the weapon and then instantly try the weapon. So you don't need to compile and export and make a build and then save it and then launch the game and then open a folder and then open a file and then launch and then test. So it's like
nice one.
Way more streamlined than most things you see.
Nice one, Eric. So yeah, we've just got around 30 seconds left. Is it okay if we just jump to a giveaway you have coming up, and then we can wrap things up?
Yeah. We still have some amazing HyperX cloud headsets left for fan art. Not few people claimed theirs, but yeah, post us your fan art on Twitter or whatever it's named now. Let's not talk about that. But and you have a good chance to get one of these nice headsets. We also have this in office. I quite like them actually. Here's some of our cool fan art. Check out the Steam post if you want to see more of this. Yes, and if you are on this list and you haven't gotten your headset and you want one, just message me on Discord. And here are the links if you need.
Amazing.
So make sure to benefit from that.
Okay. Thank you to Flowfly Games, Eric, Alex, for joining us today. Synthetik 2 is an awesome game. It's on Steam Early Access. Please go wishlist it, go buy it. Again, thank you to our audience for joining us for this episode of AWS GameTime. And we'll see you next month. Keep building on AWS, keep gaming. Bye-bye.
Bye.